Hey, everybody, another episode of Housing Solutions Podcast, One Step Away, a safe space to transform lives one step at a time. I'm your host, Dr. Zalex Rivera, also known as Dr. X. Hope everybody's having a great, productive day today. Really excited about today's episode as we explore lived experience. You know, a lot of times people talk about in shelter or just in nonprofit, we want to hear from the person who has the lived experience. But when do we actually do that, right? When do we actually sit down with a person and say to them, hey, talk us through your experience. Talk us through what you went through and how we as nonprofit practitioners can be better practitioners or better change agents in that process. So we're excited today because we have Shams DaBaron, the homeless hero. Hey, Shams.
Hey, how's everything? Good to be here.
I'm excited that you're here. I'm most excited because, I've always been a big fan. I've told you this before. I've always been a big fan of your story and how you've used your hardship and made it a story that people understand, they find more relatable, and then they want to build and grow from it. But I'm also excited because this episode today is about triumph. It's about victory because you're also HSNY's newest board member.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a good time because I want to hear how we went from park benches to Park Avenue. Like
Park
that's basically
Avenue
what.
That's the Park Avenue. Yeah.
All right. So Shams, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about, how it all started. How did we end up in shelter?
So I guess the short story is that I grew up in foster care since the age of 2. So when you're moving from foster home to foster home, you start to get your first taste of what housing instability is like. Eventually, I ended up in a little more stable home, but at 10, I started sort of not returning home as a runaway, I guess, or not necessarily runaway. I was doing parties and jams, and I'd
you was outside.
I was outside.
Okay.
Well, I was placed into a group home, and by 12, I was discharged permanently from the group home into the streets without a safety net. They said wherever you came from, you go back to, because it was such a pattern with me. I guess they really thought I had some place to go. So my start with homelessness was around that time at such an early age in the Bronx and in Manhattan and stuff like that, just navigating the streets and stuff. At that time, obviously, there was no place for me to go. Fortunately, I did have friends who took me into their homes, and I became part of their family and stuff.
Wow. So starting off as 10, first it was your decision, right? You saying you was outside. You was having a good time.
It was definitely my
You was like, I'm going to go outside. I'm going to see how New York City really is.
Yeah.
But then at 12, you're saying they put you outside. They said, you know what, since you want to be outside, stay outside?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how was that for you? How did you process that? 12 is an early age to just fend for yourself.
I mean, I guess in the era that I grew up in, at 12, you probably think you're a grown man anyway, right? I'm a product of the hip hop culture. And during that time, my outside was going to parties, jams, and stuff like that. I kind of like at that point knew how to sort of navigate and survive, that it didn't seem bad. And the group home was so bad for me, or so, it's not a good place for me, that outside seemed like more freedom and seemed like a better place. And once I got into living with one of my friends' family, it sort of gave me a little stability. Although at that time we growing, we did music together, but the streets, it's coming at the onset of the crack era. So, we got into the street life too, trying to do music in both and stuff.
Trying to survive, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Then talk to me about how you ended up homeless.
So, I mean, that lifestyle is considered homeless.
Yeah.
As a child and even a teen, you don't have access to support systems. There's no Medicaid, there's no nothing,
Especially not during the crack era.
Especially during the crack era.
Government wasn't looking out.
They wasn't looking out.
No,
not at all.
Yeah.
So, but at some point, fortunately, the unfortunate circumstances, my friend ended up in jail. And at some point, I was I was moving around, but I started to have children.
Okay.
And once my daughter was born, I was like, I gotta change. And he called me from jail one day and was like, you gotta leave the streets alone and stuff like that. So when I got out of the streets, I became more positive, going back into the streets to help people get out of that lifestyle and do different things,
Hmm.
but wasn't making the same type of money
Yeah, it's
and
different.
stuff. Yeah, it's different.
One's fast and easy, not easy, but fast. The other one is slow.
Slow. But I struggled as a single parent. Uh, um, you know, uh, I usually don't go too much into my experience as a single parent trying to navigate with my kids. It's so traumatic, not just for me, but also for
For them.
them. It's
Yeah.
a lot there, and they're all the result of system failure. So I look at it like the system failed me as a child in my own right, but also there was a lot of system failure between me trying to be a parent and have children that I'm trying to take care of and stuff like that. So eventually, two of my kids end up in the system uh, due to their mother's situation, and I guess for my son, it was fortunate that I was able to get him before he ended up in the system as well. And so I was a single parent. And once again, system failure. They started charging me. People don't know how I ended up in the shelter.
Hmm.
They started charging me when I went for public assistance as required as I went to get my kids
Hmm.
out of the system.
Right.
They required that I apply for public assistance, something that I didn't do because I always worked and was able to maintain myself. I also made some money in the music business. So I had some money.
Yeah.
And they said, you have to apply for public assistance. So I said, all
And they
right, I'll
still do
do it.
it today. There are
Yeah,
some things that you have to do when you come in, or if you don't have if you have your child, but then let's say the child's father is not present,
yeah,
then you have to put them on child support.
yeah.
Even if you say me and the child's father are
We okay.
perfectly
Yeah.
fine, he sends they're like, no, you have to do this and have to. So the have tos are still
Let,
happening.
let me tell you system failure. So they tell me to do that
Hmm.
to help steer me towards being able to get my kids, my two daughters, out
Of
of
the
the
system.
system.
Yeah.
So I'm following and complying to be able to do that. And somehow, instead of making me the father, the uh the um the petitioner, they made me the respondent.
Mm,
The mother never showed up to court.
that's a big accident.
They made me the
That was a
the
judgment,
respondent.
right? They
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, the father must be the problem," right? But wow.
So for 10 years, they were taking child support from me. And I noticed that if I moved out of the city and I applied for public assistance there, they would fight New York to say, you got to give him his public assistance. You got to take him off
Or
whatever
whatever
case
you
of
got,
my
because he's
son.
here.
Yeah, because he's here and we're now have to do it. So I noticed that worked, right? So I'm in another state. We're doing great,
Yeah.
but then I start getting checks that's like $0.00. And I'm going
Ain't that a
crazy.
waste of paper?
Yeah, because when you when you yeah, right. The paper costs more than
Right.
what
Then
I
you sending it to
more
me. You could have just not told me about
yeah.
that one. Okay.
What I so this would happen from time to time, and
Mhm.
I would always maintain 2 or 3 jobs in order to make up for the money they was taking, saying to myself, "I gotta come back and straighten that out eventually." But I
Yeah.
was trying to get my bearings in another state because I couldn't get the support here in the city.
Now, when you're talking about being in another state, where were you living during all of this?
I was in a shelter in another
Okay.
state and then got my own place
Okay.
and was working. It was doing good,
Okay.
but they was hitting me in my money, and I was like, I got to do it. Plus, my kids now, my two daughters was getting older,
Yeah.
and I was like, I got to go get them. And so
But your son is with you at this
my son
point?
was with me the whole
Okay.
time. So we came back, and I tried to do it regular through the courts, but it was like, it wasn't working out. And now any little money I get, they still taking money. So I was like, I gotta find a different way. So my brilliant idea was go into the shelter. They'll take care of him. They have to pay for him to be there, and that's how they'll acknowledge him for being with you. That I didn't know what to do. I figured that'll work. So we
Plus, you
would
needed shelter. But
nah,
then,
not
no.
necessarily.
Okay.
The last thing I would do is go into a shelter.
Okay.
So whether I'm
So
going
when you
back to
came
my
back,
friends
where
or
were you living?
with my friends and my families,
Okay.
because I grew up with them,
Got you.
and someone always had a place to
Yeah.
stay,
Which
which
is
that's
what,
still considered homeless.
yeah, they call
Yeah,
that couch surfing now.
couch surfing,
Couch
and that's what
surfing.
we were
So,
doing.
okay. Okay.
And I had to do that because there was a time we tried to enter the shelter to do the same thing, but we kept getting uh, found ineligible. And they
Got
do
you.
the 10-day thing, and then under that door, you walk in and you see the form. It says
And you got to go
ineligible,
back,
and you got to go back. You got to start again.
give them the same stuff.
And at that time, there wasn't a lot of services for for men with kids,
Yeah.
right? So they would find especially if you had a small child, you didn't have a couple of children, so they would always be struggling to figure out where to place me
Yeah.
and him and stuff. But we ended up in a place on the west side of the Ellerton Hotel, which was okay. It's like a kitchenette. So we were going back and forth with the DHS, I guess, and we couldn't get the placement originally. So when we came back to do it again, I went to ACS.
You went to ACS.
Yeah, I went to ACS. I said I want to report.
So that,
They
okay.
yeah.
You wanted to report what?
I said the city's being negligent, and the guy looked at me like I was crazy. He's like,
I'm
what?
looking at you like you crazy too.
He says, first of all, don't ever tell us that you and your son are sleeping in the streets. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
He
Yeah.
says, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to write you a letter and you take that to PATH. I took the letter there and they let us go through.
Okay.
And so then we ended up in, the Ellington Hotel
Okay.
where I raised him throughout his junior high school and some of his high school years before we entered into housing using, at that time, the Work Advantage Program.
Nice.
Voucher.
Yep.
Oh, not so nice.
At the time, might have been okay.
We ended up getting bamboozled into an apartment that I never saw. It was a horrible apartment. The area was crazy, right? And then we ended up after the 1 year ran out, we were right back in the shelter. And that happened to us twice. The second time with the Work Advantage, that's when the funding got pulled, and we end up back in the shelter.
Yeah. It happens a lot. Recently we were talking about that. Well, actually, yesterday we did something where we were talking about the government shutdown. Now, it was much different at those times, but how the government shutdown impacted people in their housing. It wasn't just the SNAP benefits that was impacted. It was also the fact that those vouchers that people have in the city or any type of government assistance was also paused. And it's like it put a lot of people for that 43, 45 days in a hardship, right? But the way you're telling your story, I just keep hearing that, you were just trying to find which avenue you can go down where you could survive, you and your kid.
Yeah. So at first it was intentional.
Yeah.
Hey, this is how I'm gonna get them to stop the child support, right? But I didn't realize I know the systems fail, but in the shelter system, I never did it before. So I didn't know how bad it was, the bureaucracies and just how these systems run. And, think that was a few
Yeah.
years ago, it's been improvement. But at the time, it was just failing us. I remember going back and forth because at one point we had to sleep at EAU, at PATH. We saw someone commit suicide. There was another time it was a riot. And I ended up calling Help Me Howard, I think it was, and they did a report. So then the then mayor said, we're going to put them in. That's what led me out of state, was he said, we're going to put them in the jail that was closed, the Bronx House of Detention that was closed. And I was like, there's no way I'm
No, I'm
walking
gonna
my
sleep
son
in
in
there.
there.
Yeah.
So the, what I thought sounded like a good idea, it turned out to be a nightmare. Because we were stuck in that system, stuck in that
Yeah.
cycle. Now we're barely surviving. And remember, if they're not acknowledging him as being with me, they're not giving him service.
Yeah.
So
Which is another problem. Yeah.
they would give public assistance to me. I never would cash it. They said, wait, you ain't cash it because you didn't give it to him. He needs it.
He needs it.
Yeah.
I'm an
So he
adult. I'll
didn't get
figure it out.
medical, didn't get all of those things.
Wow.
And this went on for years, but we still managed to maintain.
So then there was another part of your story where eventually you ended up single in a single shelter by yourself. I'm
Yeah.
assuming maybe your son was grown or older at this point, maybe,
Yeah.
but talk to me about that. How did that
Yeah.
happen for you?
So once again, that's when the voucher funding ran out.
Mhm.
And when that ran out, we had to return to the shelter. But this time, he's 18 years old. He's 18 years old, and um, yeah, he aged out.
Yeah.
So they're telling us you both got to go to 30th Street Men's Shelter, and I'm like, I didn't really even know what that was, but it was enough for me. Like, I'm not walking into a single adult shelter with
With my
we're
son.
not doing that.
Right. So there were no adult family locations at that time.
No one told me about that.
Got
If
it.
it did exist, but not for us. And so what I did was I had to bring them into friends' houses, and we
Mhm.
would pay them. So I'm not overburdening them. I would stay in the streets. So
You
he
let your
would be
son
okay.
stay with friends
Yeah, and he
and then
was
let him
working, so he started to be able to
pay
make his
himself.
money, but it
Yeah.
negatively impacted his ability to go to college and continue his education there, you know, because now he's surviving and stuff like that. But the goal was definitely to make sure that he didn't have to really have to experience what I was experiencing or had experienced at his age in the streets and stuff like that. But I was like, you know, at some point going from place to place, couch surfing gets
Mhm.
played out.
It
When
does.
you're young and you and your crew, y'all chilling or your homeboy or whatever,
Yeah.
that's cool. But when you
But it got a
getting
time
old,
limit.
it's like,
But it also has a time
what you
limit.
mean you got a wife and kids? Like it's me. It's like you're a sham. You can't, nah,
Yeah,
man.
like when I teach, my students, I teach a understanding homeless class, and I tell them like, raise your hand if you are willing to permanently house your best friend. And everybody starts thinking, they're like, well, it's my best friend. And I'm like, yeah, but tell me, would you, if that
Yeah,
person lands in on hard times, yes, you'll help them, but that help has an
yeah,
expiration date, right?
yeah,
Like how many, especially now that, people are grown and stuff like that. Like you said, you might have a wife, you might have kids, you might have whatever. How many times you going to come home
yeah,
and see a grown person on your
yeah,
couch, right?
yeah,
Without, and then if they're not saying to you, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, it's like almost
yeah,
having too much
yeah,
of a burden. So
yeah.
people don't recognize that. A lot of people are just like, yeah, my friend will take me in. They will not.
But that and then I've been through horror stories. Like I've been through
Yeah.
situations where you come and all your stuff is in the street, and you're like, "Yo, what happened?" Oh, I had to clear the closet, and it was just too
And
much
you was too
stuff.
much, so you gotta
And you're
go.
like, "Wait, but you put this is all I
All I
own. Like I
own,
don't own anything
anything
else.
else
You put it in the
in the
streets."
street,
I'm like,
it's too much.
yeah. So or you become the living babysitter, or so
Or
those
you gotta
type of
cook.
things, or you got
You
to
gotta do
cook.
something. You gotta
You got to do
contribute in
something,
this household.
contribute. Yeah. So
It gets taxing.
I was like, you know what? Before I end up in a situation, you know, I'd rather just be in the streets. But I tried the shelter because the weather, the extreme
Yeah.
weather and stuff. So people's telling me go to a shelter. I didn't even know what a shelter was, and they said this. So the first shelter I went to, I'm not going to mention the name, was crazy. I was like, oh hell no. I was like, no, I ain't built for this. It's like, no way. Right? So I was out of there, right? So
Okay.
I was like, I would take any park bench, any train, I don't care. You
So
know?
let's stay there. I know
Yeah,
we're not gonna mention the name, and
yeah.
we're very hopeful that whoever they were, they have changed at this point. But one thing you said before when you was talking about, living with your son and then trying to get your other daughters back was that outside seemed to feel like a better place
Yeah,
than the
definitely.
shelter. And so that was at the point when you was navigating the family side. So
Yeah,
um, now family side is a little better, right? I tell people all
yeah.
the time, don't watch movies. The movies that are
Oh,
depicting like you in a cot and you
no.
gotta stay awake to hold your kid because they're gonna still that's not how New York City is designed.
No.
But then I always tell people another side of that because some people are like, oh, why do people sleep outside? Why
Yeah,
do people, sleep in front of Madison Square Garden or wherever they're sleeping? I'm like, because it's probably safer, right?
yeah,
Because all of us will just walk past that person
yeah.
versus some things that may take place inside of the shelter. So talk to me about that. Why do you feel like outside was safer? Why do you feel like that was a better place?
So at one point it was just a bed.
Yeah.
Like I go. I
Go to
I
sleep, get
go
up
to sleep, get
early,
up early. I'm out.
outside.
I
Yeah.
don't need to eat. I'll find a soup kitchen, right? I was
Yeah.
good. I knew how to navigate
Navigate.
that without having to get into confrontations or anything like that. Right? It's like surviving in any type of rough or hostile environment. Keep to yourself. Don't be a people business, etc. Right?
Yeah.
And don't let nobody take advantage of you. Right? So I definitely wasn't going in the bathroom because you go in the
In the
bathroom
shelters?
in the shelters. No, not at
Okay.
all. You go in the bathroom, and that more so the single adult shelter. You go in the bathroom. If someone's not shooting up or leaving the feces behind,
Yep.
someone's out there. Someone's there to rob you.
Right.
Right? They probably peeped
Or do
you
something else.
or do something else.
Yeah.
So, and I've seen all of that.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
So there was a gradual progression of the danger that existed in that environment through years. So at
But
one
also
point,
just what you were subjected to. Like,
yeah,
even if it wasn't as quote unquote dangerous, who feels like waking up and seeing somebody shooting up next to
yeah,
them or maybe not even awake
yeah.
this
Well,
morning?
that stuff, and it's all traumatic,
Yeah.
because
Adding
I'm
on top
watching
of
death,
whatever you
trauma that
already.
you're going through in your
Yeah.
own life. So, in retrospect, I realize now that they were doing things like paroling people from prison to the shelters.
Yes.
They weren't the problem because most of them are not trying to go back to jail, but they were also getting rid of the respite beds and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So when they started doing that,
Psych beds they was getting rid of
all of
eventually.
those people are now in the shelter, and so you got
Drug rehab
drug
beds.
rehab. So
Yeah,
you
we
got
trying to get rid of
working,
all these beds.
yeah. So without services on
Correct.
site, so without that, you just got a recipe for disaster. The
Yeah.
person that's not trying to go to jail, he can't process like this guy just stole from me. You know what happens in jail when you steal from me? But
Yeah.
I can't do nothing.
Yeah.
This, other people are just like for mental health reasons or whatever, they're going through a situation and someone might prey on them or vice versa. There's just things that just wait, where's the services? Where's the help? And it
Right.
didn't exist. So at some point, once the guy pulled out the ice pick next to me and threatened to kill this guy, I said, nah, I can't do it no more. I'm out. And so when we talk about the safety, my park bench in Harlem
Safer.
was totally safe. I mean, it was so much peace. To this day, I go visit my bench. Sometimes I'm sitting out there and I'll be like, dude, you don't have to be here all night. Like you got a place. Like go home. Go
No, but
home.
sometimes it reminds you, right? It's like a
Yeah.
humbling moment. No. So like when I started off my career 16 years ago, and I started off in single adult men's shelter, right? And I remember one time I had a situation that, for better choice of words, it changed my perspective, right? Or broke me, as people used to say back then, when I came to work and one of my clients were blue. They were,
Wow.
yeah, because he had died overnight
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
died maybe sometime this morning, not really
Yeah.
sure. But by the time I got to work, he had OD'd. And so watching that body go out of that
Yeah.
building, right? In
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
open dorm.
Dramatic.
And then thinking about the men that were laying next to him. And now I got to go man by man, right? To make sure that everybody's okay.
Yeah.
And then just to think, being a female in that environment, men, even then, they're not just going to start crying to you, right?
Yeah.
Even though they just woke up to a dead man laying next
Yeah.
to them. Nah, they're going to get up. They're going to say, nah, Miss X, I was Miss X then. Nah, Miss X, I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good. That was his problem. That's what he
Yeah.
decided to do. Little do I know, you probably outside just as stressed,
Yeah.
outside just as
Trying to
devastated,
process it.
and trying to process like this is where you are. The other thing,
Before you go on,
yeah,
one of the things remember I tell you was like a gradual progression where it seemed to be getting worse.
yeah,
What I I I didn't process 'cause I wasn't thinking like that, but
yeah.
what was happening too is the drugs changed.
The drugs are still changing.
Yeah,
I can
and
tell you some
yeah,
stories now.
it's probably I don't know what they got now,
This drug stuff is different now.
but the drugs that were happening coming in, the K2 and the fentanyl and stuff like that, you're seeing deaths.
And there was no
It-
mental health awareness.
n-
Like
None.
mental health, that was for the super, super mentally ill people, or how movies depicted it back
Yeah,
then. But now, we have more awareness of like other factors, or I want to call them like low level
yeah,
mental health concerns, or the fact that we all have mental health.
yeah,
Some people have mental illness.
yeah,
But like just even those crises that happen in that building, people have to weather that storm. the other part I was going to mention is that a lot of times people just go with that stereotype that they see
Mhm.
online. And I told people when I first entered shelter, 90% of that building did not look like the guy from Law and Order that was
That's right.
knocking
Not
people over the
yeah,
head,
that's right.
right?
Yeah,
They didn't look like every time you saw,
right.
like a New Jack City or something, and somebody
Yeah,
was homeless. That's not what they look like,
yeah,
right? 90% of my building looked like me, right? That
yeah,
I get up, they was getting up, they was going to work, they
that's
had good
right.
haircuts, they, wore their clothes, protected their belongings, and kept going. And so that kind of limiting their services because of those stereotypes has always been one of my biggest concerns just with single adult men in general.
That kind of where a lot of I didn't intend on being no advocate or anything like that, but that was always like the issue. Even when I was there, I had to face that, but it's sort of I guess it was preparing me without me wanting to do it or knowing
Yeah,
about it to actually be able to address the issue in a more proactive way. Because you're right, a lot of us were just in there, just hey, we trying to survive. We go to work with,
correct.
and it's not about that. And I noticed that when people talk about homelessness, they talk about it from that small lens
Mhm.
and it becomes misinformation. So we get stereotyped, you know,
Judged,
we get judged and stuff like
y'all are
that.
all criminals. That's how everybody looks at it. Like, oh, they're just gonna knock me
Eh,
upside the head. You're like, ma'am, he's not even looking at you. He's
I,
he's looking past you. He
I
doesn't.
think I understand both perspectives or different perspectives rather,
Yeah,
because I also have the family shelter experience.
yeah,
And from that, I kind of understood that, wait, it's a whole bunch of kids that are homeless. It's a whole bunch of families for different reasons.
yeah.
And when you talk to people in the single adult shelters, men, women too, you find that, like you said, many of them are working. You got so many men that I know who are in there simply because I am paying child
Yep.
support and I cannot afford to pay the child
I've seen
support.
correction
I go to
officers, police officers,
yes,
DOE workers. I've seen
yes.
all types of people, but because their check is being 100% garnished,
They have to
they have to with
yeah,
their children because the
yeah.
whole check I've seen people come back into the shelter, they have $20.
Mm.
They done did overtime, they done been there for
Working all the time.
$20 is what
Yeah,
they
and they
cashed
don't get
out.
into no problems, no
None,
nothing.
but they also can't get out of here
Yeah,
because they bring home, not only make, they make a certain number, but only bring home $20. So it's a lot.
which is why one of the things that I've been doing in the stuff that I do, and it didn't start like this. I had to I had to learn because if I've been homeless all my life, I don't really even know what stable housing is,
Yeah.
and it took other advocates and people to really pull me to the side. Why you never talk about housing? I'm like,
Because what is that?
what is that? I don't
Yeah.
even know what stable housing is. I know how to survive and do the streets, the shelter and stuff, and I don't even know what stable housing is. But I realized that that has to be the trajectory for us. We have to get to the housing because what about that DOE worker?
Yeah.
That DOE worker and everybody. It doesn't matter what your profession is. Everybody should be able to access housing.
They should be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, but one of the things that you also talked about was you started to tap into the different resources, right? But before we dive into that, I want you to also talk about your mental state when, because you know what the streets could have done. You could have went back there and made quick, fast money
Yeah.
and gone a certain route. So how was your mind? Like, how were you always convincing yourself, don't do that? Stay here, but this is also another tough space. So how did you keep that together? Like, don't
It
go over here, stay here.
it wasn't, I guess, knowing that I have children, it was like I gotta find a way to make sure that I can keep moving.
Mhm.
Um, I'm I have certain talents that I was able to use. Starbucks became an office. Planet Fitness became my place to shower
Yep.
and stay clean. So I figured out a routine that no one would know I was homeless while I was designing flyers. It didn't take much to sit in a computer and design a flyer that brought me some income. So I found ways to sort of like minimize the impact of being homeless, right? But at the same time, there was a mental deterioration,
Mm-hmm.
if you could say it like that, that I didn't see coming, didn't understand. So I always talk about how my drinking, I guess the simple explanation is how it went from like 1 or 2 beers to like, wait, I just drank 6 beers? Deuces? Like, wait a minute, what are we doing here? Like, you know, and then it got to the point where it's like, I don't even remember what happened last night.
Right.
And
How'd I get there?
that's not
Yeah.
me. And I went from at the 2 beers, I'm like, yeah, once I make this movie, I'ma conquer the world.
Uh-huh.
But six deuces in, I'm like, how did I end up like this? Like my life is right. And so I was getting angry at first at the reality.
Right.
So every negative encounter was not every negative, but
But a
some
good portion of them.
encounters
Yeah.
gotta come out. So people like, oh, you gotta relax. And I'm like, don't tell me to relax.
Yeah. You don't know what I'm going through.
Yeah.
Mind your
And
business.
after a while, like I didn't necessarily want to hurt another person,
Yeah.
but then I started to want to hurt myself.
Ooh.
I had gotten to the point where I say, yo, this has always been your life. Like, yeah, you got great ideas, but it's not manifesting. So it got to the point where I was like looking at the train, saying, just jump. It got to the point where I was walking over the bridge saying, just jump. Thankfully, I'll be like, "At the train, that might be, I might feel that pain. I
No,
ain't
not
doing that.
might. Not might.
You
You would
gonna
have
feel
felt
that
that
pain.
pain. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And looking down at that water, I said, I can't swim. I was like, if I change my mind,
Yeah.
I was like,
You
okay,
can't.
hold
Yeah.
on. And my kids would always like give me encouragement. Like, no, Pops, you could do it. Hey,
Yeah.
I said, "Okay." And my kids.
Yeah, yeah.
And I started asking for help. So
Ooh,
whenever
that's a good one.
yeah, I would go to, if I went to a HRA office, I'm telling them, hey, look, I don't know what's going on. I was ending up in the hospital every now and then, ER visits,
You was
because my
blacking out?
blood pressure was
Oh,
rising, the
okay.
drinking wasn't helping it.
Okay.
So, and I didn't understand that these are major problems. They're
Yeah.
telling me you need primary care, you need to do something. I'm like, just give me the shot, get this thing out so
Right.
I can go be back to normal. Don't worry, I ain't gonna drink no more. By the time I'm feeling better, I'm
Time you
looking
get
for
out
the
here, you
next
looking for a
drink, right?
drink. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was just that's how you get in those cycles.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of us end up dying while homeless.
Yep.
And it was like I was on that path. And it was other homeless people that were telling me, yo, you can get help. Like, and I'm like, what? Like what? I keep telling these people, they said they got residential treatment places. I was like, what's that? They said it's better than the shelter. You go there, you get 2 people to a room. They don't really, you can just, they don't go as hard on the curfew. I was like, well, that sounds like a nice hustle. But-
He said
so
hustle.
so I went.
Okay.
And that's the first time going there. They said, yeah, you got to do 2 group meetings.
And you like, oh
What's
my
a
God,
group meeting?
now a
What's this,
group.
right? I said, I'll do it because it was real comfortable. The food was better. And from there, that was the first time that I saw what help looked like.
But wait, let's go back.
Go ahead.
So another thing I frequently tell my students and like people that I work with is because, a lot of times people connect the stereotype of homelessness to people who are on drugs, alcohol, and they just bad with money. They're all lazy
Yeah.
bums, as they like to use those words. And I always say to them, like, y'all do know that there are more instances that alcohol becomes the response, the consequence of being homeless. It is not the cause of homelessness. And I use the example because, when you're talking to people who have never been homeless or experienced it or been near it, they're like, that's not true, right? I would be humble.
Yeah.
I would go in there and I would just do what the case manager tells me to do. And I'm like, first of all, no, you would not. I said, but also think about if you were on the streets and you had a toothache, right? It is easier to get heroin in this country than it is for you to get dental service. And toothaches can go straight to your brain, right? So I'm like, you got to think about it like that. As soon as I give that example, everybody's like, oh, because we've all experienced a toothache.
That's right.
So I'm like, now think about that. Or think about the fact that when you enter shelter, your ego is immediately bruised because nobody wakes up and says, I want to be homeless. You never speak to a kid and they say, you know, when I grow up, I'm gonna go sleep on that park bench. I saw this guy. He was really nice. His life is very free. Like nobody says that. Then by the time they come into a shelter, people have already exhausted every avenue.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people are like, they couldn't have. Yes, they did. They went to their mother's house. Their mother got sick and she had her own problems. Or they went to friends. Like you said, you were couch surfing. Then they ended up in shelter. Now your manhood is attacked, right?
Yeah.
Because now you got to tell me, the little old case manager, who's significantly younger than you, probably your daughter's age, right? Where are you going? Because you got a curfew. Where your girlfriend live? Or where your children's mother live? What's her name? In case I got to look. All of these kind of things, or the fact that you even got to meet with me for IOP. Yes, it's helpful, right? The whole goal of that is to be helpful, but we never look at how it's impacting your psyche.
That's right.
You a grown man.
That's right.
And I'm talking about something. You want to do what with your girlfriend? Not my business. You need to be here by 9 o'clock or I'm going to give your bed away. It's too much. So every now and again, that one beer, like you said, turns into 6, that turns into weed. Like it can just keep growing.
Spiral. And if you are in an environment where you don't have the basic support system, like mental health, you know, okay, I might be a person who I lost my my house because of a fire. Of a fire.
Natural disaster. Like you can't never stop that.
There's a mental health component to that. You know, my job or whatever it is, if you have to go through that change, there's some impact on your mental health.
Yeah.
So if you don't have any way of sort of mitigating that, then, you know, it could become, you know,
then that one beer feels a little moment.
I'm a casual drinker.
Right.
But you know what? Give me another one.
But it gave me an hour of clear head, drink some beer, and be normal, but next thing you know, you've been sitting in now 7-8 hours.
Yeah, and so it's not you're not homeless because of that.
Yes,
but
it's not making the situation better.
And so those are things where like I was saying to you, getting the first insight into what support systems look like, which I didn't have all of that.
Yeah,
but when I first start to say like, oh, this therapy thing is good, they're showing me how to deal with my anger. You know, they're showing me like it's not really the drinking. Like the drinking, when you drink like that and you stressed and you just, I'm doing that to manage the stress. But holy crap, they got me doing yoga.
Yeah, like who thought of that?
Who thought of that? I thought it was corny. Like y'all lost me with that. The yoga, but then I participate.
Sometimes they do the art therapy. Like I don't want to draw. I'm not 5. Yeah, like color that coloring book. It's okay.
When I start to see how, wait, I'm not even stressed. You know, I'm good. I know how to process it. Why am I getting mad? I'm smiling at everybody.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, this works, right? And so I put that back to when I was in the shelter system.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, if they had this, it would be a better experience. I still wasn't understanding the housing component at that time, but I did started to understand the support services that was needed in these environments. So even now, you have by mandate, the city has a mandate to provide mental health services in make it accessible in family shelters. But getting back to the single adult population, there's no mandate.
Not a mandate, no. And it goes back to how the stereotype is still kind of shadowing over some of these things.
Yeah.
Because
now,
go ahead.
We're gonna get deep.
Okay.
I've been playing around. Now let's stop. So when we were at the Lucerne Hotel, people thought that my fight against the city was about not wanting to move from the Lucerne Hotel to the Radisson Hotel, because that's what the mayor wanted to do, de Blasio. The fight was because I used it as an opportunity to explore something in the right to shelter in the Callahan Decree. It was a flaw that put men like me in such a vulnerable condition.
Yep.
You create these shelters, provide no services. They become, and what I've experienced, is drug dens.
Yep.
no services, nothing. So when I challenged the city, I challenged them saying, if you move us, it's going to affect my mental health. If you move us, it's going to affect my my sobriety.
Mm.
I'm going to want to drink. People going to want to use because, you
It's
know, this
another
is stressful.
transition.
We
Yeah, it's
keep
another.
moving and moving
Yeah.
under the pretense that we're not wanted. I was like, this is mentally disabling. So what the mayor said through his lawyers was, well, anyway, contrary to what you think, we don't have a mandate. Like, we don't have to provide for your mental or consider your mental well-being. We could just move you. That's our right.
That's the right to shelter mandate. Yep.
Yeah. So I said, oh, that's not right.
Yeah.
I said, we have a disability. Our mental health, substance use. I was like, how is that not? It's federally recognized as disabilities, but why is it not recognized by the city? So I said, nah, I'm not going for it. And that's where we joined the litigation to stop it and stuff. And still the city stood on, and the judge had to, in the appellate division, they had to uphold what the city's right to shelter does have. But in the meantime, I was getting the people, by me staying in a Lucerne hotel, I was getting them, the city was moving them into permanent housing. So we got over 160 people into permanent housing because they was depopulating the Lucerne Hotel by any means necessary. But the point is that I've always looked at the Callahan Decree and says it doesn't go far enough to protect, particularly single adults, but people. And to me, it fuels. Not saying we don't need a right to shelter, but we have to look at that and make sure that it's really robust, so that it's providing the real help that's needed for a lot of the people that have to go through.
No, yeah, I agree with you. That Callahan Decree, I think it needs a part 2. I think it just needs an additional extension. Going back to the history of it, it did talk about the cleanliness in shelters, which was another issue way, way back when. And so having that part also highlights that, and it forces or mandates, let's say, shelter providers to ensure that at least the place is clean. Now we can have a sidebar conversation about that,
Right.
about how that really goes. But just make sure that the sites are clean. I think now it needs another part. That's like, you got to also maintain people's well-being, people's mental health. Moving people around like cattle is modern day slavery to some degree. And so we have to make sure that we're looking at those. Yeah. You can't just move me, because this bag is all I have. And I unpacked it in my little locker, and I feel a little bit normal here. And then you're going to say to me, all right, Shams, pack up your bag and now go someplace else.
And don't have me here for a year, 2 years, 3 years while you're spending all of this money. That was the other part.
Yeah.
Was like, you're spending at the time $3,000. It's probably way more than that now. But you're spending that for me to sleep on a cot.
Yeah.
Surrounded by 40 other people in a building with
Or
200
more.
people
Yep.
or more.
Yep.
Right? And all of that money to keep me here in this ecosystem. So you can't tell me when they say, well, the money, you can't tell me that it's a money thing, because you waste the money all the time in giving me the cot, the 3 nasty meals, and the locker. And I was like, then you have a voucher that is less than the money that is costing me to sleep on the cot. I deal with property owners now all across the city. Trust me when I tell you, if the voucher rate matched the amount of money they spend for that cot, they will throw those apartments at us. So something is wrong with that picture.
Right. The math isn't
now,
mathing.
I get into the fact that, wait, it's not that you're not building housing that could house me, but I've been displaced from the housing. I can't afford to live there.
Right.
So the housing goes up. I can't afford it. What you building for me? We're building more shelters.
That's a valid point. So talk to me about when you started, in your experience, and then we'll talk about your network, right?
It's getting too hot in here?
No.
No.
No, I'm with it. I'm with all of it. I'm with it. So but talk to me about how you realized using community-based services was going to get you out your system, out your circumstance, and just what you know now with other community-based organizations and vendors. How do you think that's helping people who are currently homeless? So tell me about your experience with them.
So my experience was a lot different.
Okay.
Because in this okay, so in a situation where let me say it like this. I'm glad that's a good question. What I did realize, and this is came out as a result of the pandemic,
Yeah.
when I was in a place that had supportive services,
Okay.
I took advantage of the supportive services. And initially, I didn't want to do it. I really went over there because they had better coffee than was normally served. They had nice the bagels was real fresh bagels.
This is at the shelter?
This is at the shelter, but this was they had another component that wasn't in the shelter. So they provided medical, mental
Oh,
health,
like
and stuff like
like a
that.
connection.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and it
But you
wasn't.
like the bagels and the
I like the
coffee.
bagels. I like the
So you
bagels
wasn't
and the
doing the
coffee.
services, Sham. You just wanted the bagels
I
and the
just wanted the
coffee?
bagels, but
Okay.
they started leaning on me like, "Yo, you can't just be coming in here getting our bagels and our coffee
And
and
not
walking
doing none
out."
of the
I
services.
said, "Oh, I gotta sit down." So I sat down, and everybody's looking at me 'cause I really didn't want to talk or participate, and I'm seeing these grown men come in here every single day, and they really working on improving their lives. I was like, "Man."
And they got the bagels and the
And they got
coffee.
the bagels and the coffee.
See the
So
catch?
yeah,
Okay.
so I started seeing so much strength in those men
Okay.
for showing up and not just, really just trying to get their life together. And before you knew it, I was in there. We had our little rules on the wall, and they would
Mm-hmm.
say, when it get to the rule to say let the other person talk, they'd be like, nope, let Sham read that because you know him. He's gonna keep talking. And so I said, okay, well, always me, right? But yeah, so so I gained strength from them. And during the pandemic, I saw before I never engaged anybody. Now I'm stuck and I'm forced to engage. I can't even go in the streets now, right? And I saw them trying to save ourselves and do things. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not doing all that. And they'd be like, yes, you are. You're going to pick that mop up. You're going to take, so I'm just that type of thing. I was seeing this type of strength that, that it inspired me
Mm-hmm.
to want to be more impactful and helpful. So I started my first advocacy, and I'm leading some, was with the food.
Okay.
I was like, nah, we can't. This is crazy, right? So what I did was I
But the
strategic.
bagels were good.
The bagels was good,
The
but
food was not
the
good. That's
food
what you're
wasn't
telling
good.
me?
So the food what came from the normal shelter when you get on, you go to the cafeteria.
Uh-huh.
You have to go to the medical part to get the
The
bagels.
bagels. But
Yeah.
the food you saying was nasty.
Oh, it was nasty. And so what I did was I know that the medical part was attached to the state, and no one wants to lose that state money.
Okay.
So what I did was I developed the name the homeless hero because I didn't want to use my name and get retaliated against, get moved. So I used the name to shield that, and I did a big thing, showed all the food, and had it sent to I forgot the mental that oversees the OTDA or something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they would investigate it and stuff. So did I win that fight? No, not at all. Not even to this day. Right? The food is still not good in these shelters, right? But I started the advocacy there because of the circumstances we were in. It's not something that like I wanted to do. And I did take advantage. So the point I was gonna make is that I knew one thing. If I wanted to change the systems of things, I have to change myself first.
Yep.
If I wanted to see change in even my fellow residents, I had to be the change that I wanted to see in them. So before I was not active, I'm just in and out. Now I'm embracing, I'm talking to people, I'm having conversations, I'm helping them and stuff like that. And by doing that, I was building better relationships. So everybody used to want to be on my dorm, on my floor because there ain't gonna be no fights. And I didn't, I wasn't no bully or nothing like that. But them tough guys in there, right? But I would have relationships where I can talk to them and they cool. So I'll be like, look, my man, I ain't trying to get high. That's not my thing. Could you take it in the bathroom? you know, and stuff. And they do it until I gotta use the bathroom. I got 10 people in the bathroom and I'm like, what was I doing? Thinking? So this is,
That's
but
where the hero part came
that's
from.
where the hero part came.
You know, you
Yeah.
was always doing harm reduction.
I was doing
Clearly,
harm
you was
reduction.
like,
I'm trying
listen,
to figure it out.
just do it on your own time.
Do it on
But
your own
call me
time.
if you need me, right?
Call me
That
if
kind
you
of thing.
need me.
Okay, that's where the hero came from in the Homeless Hero. So yeah, the Homeless Hero brand, I've always told you that I like it. It's catchy. I know you said that you were trying to hide behind it, but we had to throw that in the name. It has to be Shams, the Homeless Hero DaBaron. It can't be Shams is separate than the Homeless Hero. But I want to highlight the food part you was talking about because food is important. And that's another thing that people typically don't think about, like how we're consuming food or what food we're giving residents and how they're able to be productive. Really quickly talk about how the food, like why was it nasty? Like how was you getting around that at the time? And you said you're fighting for it now still. So
So the thing with the food was, I deal with some of the food vendors now, so I kind of understand what goes into getting the food into shelter, right? So I have a somewhat of a different approach than I did when I was in the shelter, although it's still a problem. But and that's where the system has to change to make this better. They have to understand, and that's one of the first things I pointed out. I said, if you serve us bad and unhealthy food, there's a mental health component to this. It affects our mental well-being.
Yeah, it's almost like a person who just eats McDonald's every day.
Yeah, and then
As
there's
good,
a side,
whether it's good or bad, McDonald's is not good for you.
yeah, that, and sometimes when you process that as a homeless person, that wow, this is what they fed me.
Yeah.
Mentally, you feel like you're nothing, like you're not even worth a decent meal. What that reminds me of is slavery, when they felt like we, as
Got
our
the
ancestors,
scraps.
should eat the scraps. And so, if I always say that the trauma of slavery exists in the DNA, is generational trauma that hasn't been remedied. So to actually be in one of these shelters, and Black and brown people, we make up 90% of that population, to be in them shelters and be served like that is just another
Minder.
step on that journey that says you are not worthy.
Wow.
First of all, you come in here, we're going to treat you like a criminal because you got to go through the check.
Yeah.
And if you don't have good staff, some shelters do. They got great staff. And then some, they don't do the training right. And so, if they're under the assumption that who walks through there is less than, sometimes they get treated bad. And then to feed them like that is horrible. So I've been through that. So,
Yeah.
I wanted to attack that, not trying to be no advocate or nothing, but I was like, look, the least you can do is feed us better, and that we tried to work on some things, but it didn't happen.
Now it's a work in progress. Everything with the city is, but I do want to take a moment and shout out HSNY's food and nutrition program, because that program adds a level of dignity that is stripped away from our clients with our no line pantry that we offer into the community, as well as our culturally sensitive food pantry bags that we give to our DHS shelters. Obviously, the meals are the meals. However, we want to make sure that people have that. The other thing that food nutrition does is they offer recipes in these pantry bags, right? So that people, if you get a moment that you can use the microwave or something, or if you go home with the pantry stuff, that you can make yourself a well-balanced and good meal. So I do want to shout out our HSNY food and nutrition program.
And it's important that you do that, because other people have to replicate that.
Yeah.
The city and all of the decision makers have to understand the value of that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just simply another program.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to add some dignity to it.
And sometimes it's like, sometimes it's just when I go to a soup kitchen, I can tell you which one is like, I'm going there tomorrow, and which one is like, nah. Right? But some of them, they do put that extra care. You can't choose, like in those situations, you might not be able to choose what you eat, but just how it's served.
Yeah.
And just, how it's packaged. And like you said, another important thing is the cultural aspect.
Yeah.
Because everything ain't for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that's a super important thing. Remember my experiences some years back.
Yeah.
Over time, we're starting to see the things that we need to address. And we have a city that is now starting to listen more, not just to people like you who've been in the business for years, but also to people like me who've been a recipient of the services that you provide for years,
Yeah, food definitely matters. What's the major things or major lessons that you've learned from your experience, just overall? Like now you went from living in it right? And we were talking about it before that every now and again you go back, you sit on the park bench because you need to remind yourself, re-humble, go back to those moments, even for yourself, because now you have a greater network, right?
Yeah.
We see you in a lot of different places around a lot of different people,
Yeah.
having a lot of good conversations. So overall, when you look back over your life from today, from before, what are the major lessons that you learned from your experience?
I, I, that's a deep question. Um, that's a deep question. Yeah, put me on the spot. Uh, I mean, I could talk, but goodness, let's lighten up now. So, no, I'm joking. Um, I think that and I'm talking for people with lived experience.
Yeah.
Don't ever give up on yourself. I'll talk
Nice.
from both perspectives, but from the lived experience perspective, don't give up. Like I'm so transparent and sharing because I want people to see it's nothing really special about me. Like I am the guy that slept in the street, slept on the park bench, slept in the subway, slept in the shelters, and have done it for years, right? But I'm someone who was able to take the pain and turn it into purpose, the trauma and turn it into triumph, and so on and so forth. And that's because at some point I realized like, nah, why would I give up? And then I just been lack of better words, I'm not in the streets no more. I'm doing a little better. I'm on your board. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, but what it is a testament
Yeah.
to what
Of not
every
giving up.
homeless person, every person who's in one of the facilities, the shelters, or the supportive house is showing you what each of those people are capable of. Nothing special. It's just like I was able to just do something different. You get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mm-hmm.
I said to myself, I don't want to be homeless again. So what I did, I started a real estate development company. Now I'm developing over 1,000 units of housing in Harlem,
Nice.
right? Hopefully I'll be able to get one of those houses so nobody can throw me out. I own it, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm trying not to be homeless no more. You
That's
know what I
right.
mean? Like, but, but it's a testament. So that is on the lived experience side, and it's for people with lived experience to understand their power. I'm
Yeah.
not the homeless hero by myself, although, that's me. But we all are heroes in our own stories, in our own journey.
Yeah.
And being a homeless hero is about being on that journey from homelessness to housing. And all of us that go through that represent that. But the other side of that is the for other people, the professionals, the clinicians, the elected officials, and all these people that have to address these issues or deal with these issues, or
Mm-hmm.
even if you're a neighborhood, a community member that have to, you have homelessness in your community, is for them to also see what's possible when you provide the proper support to people that are going through different distress or trauma or homelessness or whatever the issue is. If you provide that support, they all have the ability to do great things. To go from sleeping on that park bench and or yelling and screaming in the shelter because the food ain't good, right? To being a commissioner on the city's charter revision commission and
Yeah.
impacting the city's ability to build housing for people like us. And that's something that every clinician needs to think about. Like it's possible. It's not just shams. It's a lot
Yeah.
of people who we don't we don't we don't know that are in these positions that have these experiences, and I think I can say one of the great examples is the former commissioner of DSS,
Keep going.
Gary Jenkins, who have a book coming out, but he's inspiring to so many of us because Gary once went through the shelter system,
He did. Yeah.
spent over 30 years working through HRA and these different systems to actually become
Yeah.
the commissioner of DSS. So it's not just a sham story.
Yeah.
It's a
It's
lot
a
of
lot of
us.
people's story.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like we're gonna get Gary on the thing. Get Gary on the podcast next. But Shams, I want to thank you for coming out today. I want to thank you for sharing your story, sharing a piece of your story that I feel like you probably never shared. So
Never.
all right. So I
You-
feel like you never shared.
yeah.
But with that, as the end of the year approaches, I want everybody to think and take what Shams said, to not give up and understand that all things are possible. But all things are possible with your generosity, and everything, and every dollar and everything makes the real impact. This giving season, every donation and act of kindness helps families find stability, hope, and it gets them one step closer. I want to thank y'all for tuning in today. Thank you again, Shams, for joining us. Until next time, remember that we're all one step away.